Okay, we'll go ahead and start the Wilmer City Council work session from Monday, October 16th. First item on the agenda is any public comment. Anybody from the public that wishes to speak that it does not have an agenda item on the agenda for this evening? Seeing and hearing none, we'll go to liquor license violations. Judy, or City Clerk?
Pursuant to the Municipal Code, Section 310, 3-10, minimum penalties for violations of state or city ordinances resulting from the sale of alcoholic beverages. The last alcohol compliance check resulted in 1 violation of an off-sale establishment and 1 violation of an on-sale establishment. A first violation for off-sale liquor license holder Coyote Commercial Ventures, Incorporated, doing business as Sunray Spirits, and an appearance at a City Council work session is required to explain measures being taken to eliminate future violations. And we're supposed to have Cody Wangan present to speak. And a first violation for on-sale liquor license holder Diamante Night Club Incorporated, doing business as Diamante Night Club, and an appearance at a City Council work session is required to explain measures being taken to eliminate future violations there, and Carlos Torres is present to speak for them. So,
Thank you. So we're only going to take them one at a time, right? We're not going to
we will
both of them
take,
together?
yeah, one at a time, and if we want to go with Cody Wangan first, he's the assistant manager.
Cody? If you'd like to come to the mic, please. And I'm assuming you've had a conversation with him so he understands what's going on?
So we're going to get everybody that ever is going to work in the liquor store into the class, the next opportunity, I guess. And then there's a program for checking the dates that everybody has to use now, and do additional training for.
Okay. Council, do you have any questions?
Does he know,
Go ahead, Julie.
do you know when the next class is to get your people registered?
I don't. I was going to call on it, actually.
Okay.
So you haven't done that yet?
I haven't, no.
Okay. Councilman Palmer.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Is this through police? Is this through the city? Mr. Felt, can you update us on how that process works and how they would go about doing that? Just for the good of Sunray and the good of the order.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, members of the council. Yes, the class is through the Wilmer Police Department. There's no charge for that. The next class scheduled is Wednesday, December 13th, 3 o'clock in the afternoon at the police department, and there's no RSVPs needed. People that are going to be servers or working around alcohol establishment can just show up, take the class, and get their certificate that way. Cool.
Councilman Alvarado.
Chief Felt, are there some protocols or guidelines for these establishments before they get to class while they're waiting, or?
That would be a per each individual establishment, whatever they have in set up there, but just that use good judgment in the meantime. But that's the next alcohol server class is December 13th. We offer, I think it's 6 of them a year, and that happens to be the next one on the calendar.
Okay. Thank you.
Councilmember Nelson.
Thank you, Mayor. Sir, I was going to ask you a question, if I may. How many employees do you have, and did you receive any training
I had,
prior to this?
when I started, and I guess it's almost expired, so I'll have to go back at this next one too.
And how many employees do you have?
I think I have 11 total for both stores, and about half of them work in the store, or in the liquor store.
Okay.
Okay, and so, so you've had conversations with our city clerk about the process, and so tonight, I mean, the council's expecting you to have a pretty formal process put in place, and this seems pretty willy-nilly to me. I mean, it doesn't seem like it's very organized. I mean, normally, when I've sat in these before, I mean, it's a very clear process of what you're going to do, how you're going to do it, and, I mean, it just kind of seems like, I mean, you haven't even made contact with the police department. I mean, do you take these things serious?
Yeah, I've never done this before, I guess. I don't,
Okay.
never had to deal with this.
Councilmember Fagerly.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. What exactly happened?
I guess the guy, he looked at it and basically just looked at the year and didn't check the month and the day, actually. And it was the right year, but he was like a couple months off.
So you don't have a machine that reads it?
He didn't use the,
You do have one?
yeah.
Okay, that'd probably be
Well,
part
we
of
don't have one that
training,
reads the card. We have to type it in ourselves, and he didn't type it in.
because this is a serious offense,
I understand that.
so we're not here laughing about it.
Not laughing.
Councilmember Plowman.
Thanks, Mr. Mayor. So you're listed as the assistant manager?
Yes.
So just curious as to why the manager or the owner is not here,
The owner lives in South Dakota, and he's on jury duty for the month.
okay?
And the manager's at an internship for a month.
Okay. I guess I would hope that the establishment's taking this seriously, and I hope that they're not necessarily throwing their assistant manager under the bus, because actually the chain of command, the higher up, I mean, that's just like in the military, that's where it falls.
Right.
And so, like I said, it is a little bit frustrating, although it seems as though this individual was kind of maybe sent to the wolves with a little bit less experience in terms of these kind of processes. You've been in communication with the manager and the owner regarding this?
Yeah, the owner basically told me just to get everybody retrained and keep training them at the store, I guess. That's basically all he told me.
Okay, well, I hope for your sake and the sake of the store that the owner and the manager take it seriously.
I would just say, I've been on a few of these as well. Use the machine, do the training, and I don't want to see you here anymore.
I don't want to be back.
I'm just curious if you got a list, I mean, what you got from us. Did it give you a list of things to do to avoid this, or what kind of information did you get from us?
As far as I know, the only thing I got was the letter stating that I had to come here today. And I guess I have it right here. Yeah, it just says that I was notified of the first violation within 3 years, and we're passing 3 compliance checks and are required to appear before city council to explain measures to be taken.
Okay.
So you didn't go down and talk with the city clerk at all or anything like that before coming tonight?
I just talked to him on the phone.
Okay, okay. Well, I'll just say what the council's already said. I mean, this is a very serious matter, and, you really have to make sure that this doesn't happen again. I mean, because if you have repeat failures, I mean, you could end up losing your liquor license.
Yeah,
And, so you need to understand that, so, okay. And I kind of agree a little bit with Councilmember Plowman. I think normally we see the owner or the manager, and, to have them send you up, I certainly hope they're taking it serious, and,
well, yeah, the owner's not very happy, I guess.
I'm sorry?
The owner's pretty bad about it, so.
Okay, so I guess I would just ask our city clerk to follow up with the owner and make sure that they understand the importance of this. I mean, sending the assistant manager probably wasn't the appropriate thing to do. And make sure that they understand that, the council expects them to take these matters seriously. I know when we've done these before, it's been, I haven't been involved in one for quite some time, but it's a very militaristic process, and this seems to be a little bit more wishy-washy than I've ever experienced before, so, which is very concerning to me, so. Thank you very much for being here. Is anybody, oh, I'm sorry, Councilmember Christensen.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. What does our policy state as far as who is to come forward and address the council or the committee? What does the policy say? I thought it said owner in there. I don't have it in front of me, but, and
You know
I
what-
think it would be very appropriate for us to demand that the owner come and speak to us. I think-
Councilmember.
I feel for the guy. I mean.
Yeah, I kind of feel like we're chewing them out.
Oh, we are.
Councilmember
Chewing the
Christensen.
wrong guy out.
Right.
Yeah, but we see what the policy says, and I think it would be appropriate to have the owner come.
The process is that the owner is supposed to attend. This was a short notice. The owner could not, so they had to have somebody present to represent. So unfortunately, he had to carry the ball on this one.
Well, maybe we could have him attend a future meeting, just to,
If you'd like, I could tell him to hopefully attend like the next one or the next couple. Is that what you would like, or?
I don't think we're saying hopefully. I don't think
I'll
that's
see
what
which,
council's saying.
which one the earliest he can be available to
Correct.
attend.
Right.
Okay, I will
Thank you.
do that.
Right. Thank you. And thanks for representing your company. We appreciate that, so.
Mayor?
Yes.
I think it'd be appropriate for us to be proactive, too, and provide them with a list of things that could be done, the responsibilities and a list of things that could be done. I'm hopeful that we're doing that with everyone that has liquor license to make sure they understand, anybody who serves, what their responsibilities are. So do we have some sort of checklist, or do we do some initial training?
He said he had gone through the training, and so that would have been explained to him at the training. I used to give those trainings, so I know what they're told.
I'm looking at Judy, though,
Okay.
at our city clerk with, excuse me, Ms. Thompson.
Yeah.
With, if there isn't something that could be sent out to, to the business itself, too.
That we do not, I don't know if that would fall on the PD's responsibility. Maybe that's something we need to set up between the two of us, but presently, no.
So I think what we need to do on this is I think we need to revisit what we used to do, and then we need to go back to what we used to do. So, because what I'm seeing happening tonight isn't what we used to do. So. Okay. The next individual, Ms. Thompson?
Be Carlos Torres from the Diamante Nightclub.
Thank you.
Hi, how you doing?
Hi, how are you?
Good.
So were you the server, or are you the owner?
I'm the owner,
You're the owner? Okay.
Yep.
Okay. So,
and here's a service.
right. So can you tell us what actions you've taken to prevent this from happening in the future?
Well, we can prevent and get more, be carefully, more stricter, and then check everybody. ID in the hands, so prevent more accidents like that.
Chief Felt, can you give us the, what happened in this particular case?
Mr. Mayor, members of the council, in this particular case, the underage individual that was employed by the police department for the compliance checks went in, was identified using their driver's license, was blue wristband, I believe was the color that was put on the wrist, which would indicate under 21 and not to be served. The employee walked up to the bar, ordered a drink, and was served anyway. And the bartender in that case indicated that he didn't pay attention to the wristband, and that was why he served. So the employee was identified with their driver's license and shown underage, but a matter of it wasn't checked.
Okay. Counsel?
What have you done with the bartender? Have you instructed him as to what to do in future circumstances, obviously?
I think the bartender is attending, right? Are you the bartender?
Oh, I am the bartender, but he.
Right. You're the owner.
Is the
Yeah.
owner,
I'm the owner,
but he
yep.
was the person that served.
Sure.
The person making my fault, because I'm not paying attention, but that time when checking, I'm distracted, got the money, and the lady come in there asking for wristband or ID, and that's basically my fault, and they get more strict in there.
Did that answer your question?
Yep.
Okay.
Thank you.
So if they have wristbands that indicate if they're under 21, that tells me that somebody under 21 can be in there to dance?
Yeah, to dance.
Okay.
Just to dance. There's no serving alcohol, just only to dance, and then the bacteria, they know their wristband. You got different colors to drinking colors, different one. So before you go to the bar, asking for a wristband, and then this is gonna control this. And that time, this is my phone, it's not checking because I'm distracted. And this is
Okay.
barely open, so there's nobody in the close, so it's barely open, and then I'm distracted, count money, and then I put attention what I'm doing.
He normally doesn't serve alcohol. He's the DJ. And
Okay.
so it's myself and another gal who
There you go, yep.
bartends. And so that day I went to the bathroom and he was distracted counting the money.
Okay. My concern with a facility that has under 21 people, along with people who are drinking, is that you even need to be more vigilant and aware because of the close proximity between the under 21s and the people who are old enough to drink. So to me, if somebody can go up to the bar and order a drink and they visibly have a wristband on, what's the chances of somebody out in with the general dancing population and somebody who is of age just gets a drink and passes it off to them? That is there somebody monitoring even on the second layer of somebody drinking out in the establishment if you're not catching it even when they're right up to the bar? That would be a major red flag for me.
Yep,
But you have to be even that much more vigilant.
yep.
Yeah, we have additional securities that are, they monitor how many minors we do that come into the bar. And then they usually radio us or tell us how many our minors we have in the club. And if they do see someone who is a minor, they do escort them out. And it's happened before.
Yeah,
Have you attended the alcohol training, education training, as the owner?
Okay.
we, yeah.
Okay. And, okay.
Okay. Again, we take this very serious. Thank you for being here. And do you have a plan to run your people back through the training? Or how are you going to do that?
Yes.
Yes.
And we strive to, because this would be our second compliance check, and the first one, we did pass. The second one, it just was.
Just
in-
undistracted, and then we'll
in
check it out.
major, accident, but we do plan on getting trained again, so.
Sure. Okay, so Chief Felt, you can touch base with him if you want, and he can get you those dates again, so. Thank you very much for being here, appreciate it.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Mr. Mayor,
Yes,
if I may, maybe it would be appropriate to state what the consequences are for the second, third, and fourth ones, violations. At which point do they lose their license completely? Is it the third one? Do we have that?
It'd be in city code. I don't have it off the top of my head.
I think we do this, what, twice a year, something like that?
right, we do it twice a year.
And I've forgotten what they were. I know they'd have to appear the first time, but I can't remember what the second and third ones are.
The second one's a substantial financial penalty, but then after that, I think, I remember 450 or 500. I can't remember. But then I think it's the third offense is you can relicense. Fifth. It's a bunch. Because the money just builds up.
Siri. I'm sure our city clerk is going to memorize all these.
I will, I'm sorry, today was a little distracting, what went on at City Hall this weekend, so I didn't have time to prepare myself on this.
If I can follow up and get back to you later in the work, that would be appreciated.
Okay, thank you very much. Okay, we'll go on to the next item on the agenda, which is playground equipment presentation. Three of you are free to leave if you wish. You don't need to stick around, but you certainly can if you want, but we're now going to get into some other items on the agenda. So thank you very much. Ms. Thompson will be back in contact with you, and then I would recommend that you contact Chief Felt to get into that training. So thank you. Mr. DeLeo.
Good evening, Mr. Mayor, members of the council. My name is Justin DeLeo. I've met most of you, I believe, but I'm with the Public Works Department. And I'm a certified playground safety inspector. And I'm just going to give a brief, hopefully it's brief. If I get talking too much, just push me out. So, brief overview of what's gone on in the playgrounds over the last few years and what we feel should be the next steps moving forward. So these first few slides are just kind of a history. Back in 2014, we did an equipment age report. How old was this equipment that was in all of our parks? How old were these playground pieces? The oldest pieces were from 1971. And at that time, the newest pieces were from 2009. 85% of our equipment was over 20 years old. And according to the most manufacturers, the typical lifespan of equipment was 15 to 20 years. So that just kind of gives you an overview of when and how old these pieces were. Then the following summer in 2015, we started with playground inspections. That was a detailed inspection of the 28 playgrounds. We have more parks, but not all of them have play equipment in them. 230 total units were inspected, and they were categorized in different priorities, 1 through 5. Priority 1 was a life-threatening or life-altering hazard, and it went through to 5, which was no issue. So as you can see, 50% of our equipment was either priority 1, 2, or 3 hazard, which was what we feared, but no one wanted to hear. And from that, as you remember, we removed a lot of equipment. We removed all the priority 1s that fall. We removed or remodified the priority 2 hazards, which was the next step down, still could cause significant injuries. And we had discussion and or improvement of the priorities 3 through 5. At this time, there were lots of questions and concerns from citizens. I'm sure you all remember that time. That was a tough time for everybody. No one liked seeing their playgrounds decimated, for lack of a better word. But we felt it was something that had to be done, for safety-wise. Then in the summer of 2016, we added new units at Cardinal Park, College View, Gesh, Hedin. Ramblewood had 2 new units, and Minigasco Park had a new unit. And I'll just kind of go through the pictures. That's Cardinal Park. That's the newer unit that was installed. As you can see, it's got all kinds of different things, slides and a climbing wall and a fire pole on the backside. So lots of different activities on one unit. And at that same time, we removed sand and we went to wood chips, engineered wood chips that help to keep us ADA compliant.
Justin, could
Yes.
you explain where these parks are?
Yes, Cardinal Park is in the southwest side of town. It's just 1 block south of 19th Avenue, 20th Avenue and Ortonblad, 24th Street, I believe. College View is up in the northwest, College View Edition. Same type of unit, maybe a few things were different colors, but you can see there's a little more clearer picture of the wood chips. We've heard mixed reviews. Some people love them, some people don't. But we heard the same thing about sand. People really liked the sand, people really didn't like the sand. So. Hedin Park is north of town in the Country Club Edition. And I'm sorry I didn't get that nice of a picture on this one, but you can see, again, similar type of unit, lots of slides, lots of color. Ramblewood Park, we had like I said, we had the 2 units added. And we also, at that time, we put new bearings and new paint on the merry-go-round there, so that we were able to repurpose that unit. And then the picture on the right is some of our older equipment. You can see the wooden swings and the wooden buckabouts in the background. So, I mean, there's still some equipment there that is maybe a little older, but it's still usable at this time. That being said, there's still work to be done. There's numerous parks that did not get equipment replaced. Voss Park is one of them. That's on the northwest side of town. We removed 2 spring animals from there, a wooden play unit and the Extra Glide swings. Those are the swings that you use your arms to pump with. And what's left over there is a slide, a swing set, a merry-go-round, and a buckabout, which is what's in the picture on the left up there, kind of like a teeter-totter type thing. But you can see the ages there, you know, from the late 70s and late 80s there. So the equipment there is older, and there's not too much left over. Valley Brook Park is just to the north of Voss Park, off of 7th Avenue and County Road 5. There we removed spring animals, and you'll see a common theme here. A lot of the things that we removed are similar, and a lot of what's left is similar. There's swings left, overhead climber, a merry-go-round, and 2 buckabouts. You know, when you look at the pictures, you can see the large gap in the middle, and I know no one wants to see that, but that's just the reality of what we have right now. Northside Park is off of L Avenue. We removed 2 spring animals, Extra Glide swings, a wooden play unit, and one of the swing sets there. This park is a little different because it does have quite a bit left over, you know, merry-go-rounds and buckabouts and slide. But you can see the ages there. I mean, everything's from the late 70s, early 80s over there. Rainbow Park is in the Pheasant Run edition off of 5th Avenue. And these pictures, I apologize, they did not turn out very well at all. We removed 2 spring animals, a squirrel climber, which is just, it was like a dome type climber, and a wooden play unit. What's left is a buckabout, a digger, a merry-go-round, and a swing set, all from the early 80s and early 90s. Sunrise Park is again in the Pheasant Run edition, kind of up on the path, up just to the north, or the north of the ball field there. We removed 2 spring animals in the play unit from there. What's left? Again, it sounds like I'm repeating myself a lot. Digger, buckabouts, swing set, merry-go-round, and net climbers, all from the late 80s.
I noticed we were losing the spring animals. What was the danger with those?
The spring animals, most of the ones that we removed, they had handles that were similar to this in diameter, and they were about level with a young child's eye socket.
Okay.
And some of the newer ones have a pad on the side, or not a pad, but they're bigger. So obviously it would hurt if someone got hit with that, but it wouldn't, the chance of severe damage would go down.
Okay, that makes sense.
So that's what the majority of the spring animals were removed for.
Okay, and the Extra Glides?
The Extra Glides had a gap on the back. There were 2 bars that came down that theoretically a child could slide through and their head could become entrapped.
Okay.
And so that's why those were removed too. Wellshire Park is on the east side of town, kind of by Valley Golf, across the ditch off of 7th Avenue there. This is a tough looking park, as you can see from the pictures. We removed spring animals again, the wooden play unit, and the Jack and Jill club, which is, was kind of two arches that came up and then a slide down in the middle, a little platform to play on, again, for the entrapment hazard with the steps. That's why that was removed. What's left over, swing set, buckabout, and a merry-go-round. Other considerations, I didn't take any pictures, just for the fact that maybe these weren't quite as dire as those playgrounds. Miller Park, which is getting worked on right now, or it has the discussion. Robbins Island, you know, now that we have the destination playground, there are a few pieces of equipment up on the top of the hill near the restrooms. Do we want to keep that there? Do we want to improve those? Do we want to leave them? Hilltop Park is kind of similar to Northside Park as far as, it has a lot of pieces of equipment, but they're all getting a little bit older. Bursell Park is on the east side off of 4th and Johanna. There is a large play unit there, but we've made some modifications to it, and we're a little hesitant to do that just for the fact that if we start modifying things, the manufacturers won't accept any responsibility for them. They'll say, well, you changed it, it's your deal now. And Sperry Park, off of North 71, we removed a slide there, but there's really not a whole lot there. So those were just other considerations that we have. I'm sure maybe some of you have different ideas, or the public has different ideas, or whatnot, but that's all I have for you. I'm happy to answer any questions that, if anyone has any.
I have a question. So in 2016, we put a bunch of new equipment in.
Mm-hmm.
How much money did we spend in 2016?
Just,
You know, it's at the end of the year, that
Right.
a match deal, I think
Right.
you spent about 190 total was the cost.
yeah. And that was for the surfacing and the units themselves, installation, too.
Okay. So, so it included the playground equipment itself,
Yep,
plus it included the materials that were on the base,
yep,
and then it included the installation as
and the
well, at
installation.
about 190,000.
correct.
And about
So-
how many parks were addressed at that time?
6 parks and 7 units.
6 parks and 7 units.
Yep.
Councilmember Schwantes.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, and thank you for the presentation. I just wanted to note in regard to the upper area, the playground equipment at Robbins Island, the new playground is wonderful, but people cannot bring their animals onto the playground. So if someone came with a dog or whatever and wanted to let their children play, that would be their option, would be
Right.
to go there.
Yep.
It's also a convenient location for anyone using that shelter. If they have younger kids and don't want to have to go down the hill to the playground while they're getting something ready or whatever, it's an opportunity for them to be able to use that playground equipment. I know it's older and
Yep.
it's not very sexy looking, but it certainly is still useful and
Absolutely, that's
has
a great
value
point.
in my mind.
Yep.
Councilmember Nelson.
Thank you. Just a couple of questions. The parks that you did put playground equipment in that the mayor just asked about the cost was really just one unit per
Correct.
park.
Yep.
So those parks still don't have, I mean, it's just one piece of equipment there, correct?
Correct, just one larger piece of equipment, but yes, nothing else. I know we've had comments about maybe some swings or
Yeah.
something else different, but yes, just one unit in each park.
Then thinking over on the east side, Pleasant View wasn't listed in here,
Correct.
correct? And there's also another park over there that I've asked Public Works about before. There is starting to be more development along Pleasant View Drive, and there is nice equipment back there, and you literally can't get to it. And I think we had talked about, could we fill it in so people can drive there or even ride bike there? Because you literally can't get to that park right now. And there is
Behind
park
Independence
equipment
Place, yep.
behind Independence Place. And so there's equipment that I think could be utilized with that.
Mhm.
My last comment is, this hasn't gone before Community Ed and Rec yet, this advisory board, your report. Are you planning to do that? Because I know that half of that advisory board meets to talk about parks. And so I'm just curious if you're going to be getting input from Community Ed and Rec on these. Advisory board.
I came a few months ago and gave a similar report, not this specific report.
But we didn't discuss any
No, we
particular
did not.
parks
No.
or any plans, correct?
Correct.
Okay, okay.
I certainly can. I was asked to come here tonight, and I can certainly go to,
Maybe schedule that through the administrator.
correct.
Councilmember Fagerly.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. So are you looking at buying some more equipment this fall?
Not to my knowledge, this is just information at where we're at now, and
Because our director, of Community Ed, said be looking to buy this fall when the equipment goes on sale, so you'd be installing it in the spring. Because one of our parks is Sunrise. I get calls all the time because we have some daycare people up there.
Mayor.
Kids to go. And then, who requested you to take all the old equipment out? Was it our insurance carrier? Was it Minnesota Park and Rec, or was it the Sports Federation, or?
I think we as a council told them
The
because
council.
of safety concern. Because of those level 1
Mayor.
deals.
I must have voted against it.
Mr. Manzer would like to.
Yeah, we voted as a council to have them remove the hazardous piece of equipment.
Correct.
I think we
Well,
did that when you were
someone-
on vacation because we knew you were going to be gone.
Yeah, but someone must have brought the idea to the park department. So, sure.
Yeah, go ahead, Mr. Mans. Come to the mic, please, Gary.
That was back when Scott Lattimore was our Public Works Superintendent, and at that time, Steve Bresnine and Scott Lattimore, and I don't know if it came through the park board, but requested to get 2 individuals certified in playground inspection. So Justin from our department was certified, along with Rob Baumgartner, who's now at the Civic Center, was certified. So with that, they did, I don't know, that was a couple-day training or something, and they come back and went through our entire inventory of park equipment, inspected everything and categorized it according to what he had. And at that point, I think Mr. Bresnine brought it to the council and said that this is what we have and this is what we recommend to do. And I think at that time, we decided that anything that had a severe risk to a child was to be removed, and that's kind of where we went with it. So that was done 2 years ago? Yeah. So
The level 1s were asked to be removed. right?
I think it was up to the level 1s and 2s. Yep. We kind of took them on an individual basis, I think, on some of the 2s, but
Yeah, but some of the 2s you were able to modify, right?
yeah.
So if you could make the modification on the 2s, we wanted you to do that, but we wanted you to remove the 1s.
Yep.
Correct.
Yep. And as far as the talk about the playground equipment, I sat on myself and Steve Bresnine met with a bunch of daycare providers over at Jefferson Learning Center. I think it was actually last week. And apparently with the Miller project, there's some funding available with the Miller tennis courts as far as updating the playground equipment over there. So we had met with these daycare providers, and we just discussed what they would be looking for in a park and some playground equipment. So the one provider, I think it was the company out of Delano, forget me, I can't remember the name, but
Landscape structures.
yeah, okay. They came and provided some brochures on what it take, to put some play equipment back there with a cost. And then also we've worked with Minnesota Playground last year, or 2 years ago, when we purchased 7 units, came from them, and at that time of the year they had a closeout sale. So basically they showed you their brochure, and these are the units that they had that they call it a grant, but basically it's a 2-for-1 type deal is what it ended up being. So that's how we ended up. And I'm not 100% that dollar figure, but it was around $190,000 with the engineered wood surface and the play equipment stuff is what was invested. And the surfacing was all installed by Public Works. the company, Minnesota Playground, came out and did the installation. I'd highly recommend that. They had all those units installed within about a week and a half to 2 weeks. So it's really a smooth way to go.
Thank you. Mr. Holland?
Mayor, I was just going to add that, yes, we do have over $100,000 budgeted for next year's budget, and we'll be going through and over the fall ordering and getting some discounts on some of these play sets, because you can generally get about 25% discount.
So I think the numbers are, we have 100,000 in this year, and next year we have proposed an additional 100,000, and then we have 40,000. We originally had 30,000 in for Miller, but we added an additional 10 up to 40,000 for Miller for this fall. Councilmember Meske.
I was just going to say, I mean, obviously, replacing this equipment in these neighborhoods was one of our priorities as a council, and I think we're going to fulfill that. My question would be, for the equipment that's remaining, we had talked about doing some consolidations and things. Are we able to move some of that equipment? I know it's getting old, but will it move well if we were to put some of those complete parks back together?
So one time, there's some conversation a while back about possibly moving equipment out of some areas and not having play equipment there and moving other. Some equipment is movable. I would say most equipment is movable, but depending on you get into those bigger units, it gets a little more difficult to move those. But with that being said, I know at one time there was a conversation about Welland Park. I don't know if you're familiar with where Welland Park is, but Welland Park is on the dead end on 14th Street Southwest, north of Becker Avenue. There's a little park tucked in the corner, and I happened to be over there one day, and the perception was nobody was using that park. And I went over there, and there had to be about 35 little kids with daycare providers. So I stopped and I talked to those daycare providers. I said, I'll have to admit, I had never seen anybody here, and all of a sudden I see you guys here. And they commented that they come there a lot, and they like that particular park because that park is totally fenced in. So the only area that's not fenced in is to the road, so they can churn their little tykes loose, and everybody seems to have a good time. So perception sometimes is not the reality of it, and I was wrong because I was one of those that perceived that park not getting much use, but it does get a fair amount of use.
Okay. Councilmember, I'm sorry, are you finished? Okay. Councilmember Schwantes, followed by Plowman.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I was thinking that we had $100,000 to $140,000 that was from leftover funds from this year that we had set aside for playground equipment. Was that not correct?
Yeah, there was $100,000 that we moved for playgrounds this year. And then originally there was 30,000 for Miller, and we added an additional 10 at the recommendation of Community Ed and Rec and put that to 40,000. So there's an additional 40 for completing that project at Miller. Correct. That's my recollection.
I agree with what you just said, yes.
So the full 140 is going into Miller?
No. It's a total of 140, 40,000 for Miller, and then 100,000 for additional parks.
So
The
we do
neighborhood.
have around that $100,000 yet for this year to be purchased? Okay, okay. I apologize if it was my misunderstanding of the conversation. Thank you.
Okay. Councilmember Plowman, followed by Nelson.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Yeah, I remember the original meeting that we had. It was a committee meeting, actually, where we kind of discussed this and addressed the safety concerns. And so, yeah, at the time, I mean, we were concerned with the ramifications of just removing the equipment and the fact that we didn't have a backup plan, but we were more concerned with the fact that now that they had this proper training and they were bringing this to us, we were now liable because we knew that danger was present. So we had to do something. I would be interested to hear, I mean, in an ideal world, we'd have enough money to just go to all the parks, rip out all the old equipment, replace it with all bright, shiny, new, colorful stuff, and that would be awesome. But I don't foresee that happening because there's still a lot of old equipment remaining, and I think if we want to do that, replace all the equipment at all the parks, I think it's going to take a long time to get done, and it's just not feasible. I'd be really interested in hearing what the Park and Rec Board would have in terms of ideas if they were willing to have a discussion regarding consolidation. Because if we were able to, I think we could spread our costs better, and we could have better quality parks if we possibly eliminated a few. And I know that might be painful, and, trying to figure out which ones and just what to eliminate. But we got to consider not only the cost of the equipment, but the cost of the maintenance and ongoing recurring cost of new equipment when it gets 20, 30 years old. And we don't want to leave a bunch of problematic stuff, 5, 10, 20 years down the line. And I think it might just be easier now that we have some fantastic new facilities in town. I think what would complement that is, maybe we can sharpen our pencil and hone in on some of the parks that we want to take better care of, get all that old equipment out of there, do what consolidation we can. I don't know if opportunities exist to potentially, if we were to clear out a park, sell the land, get some, I don't know exactly how that would work, but there exists potential for possible stormwater retention, who knows? But I think it might be wise, instead of trying to tackle all of these parks, I just don't see it happening.
Councilmember Nelson, followed by our city administrator.
Okay. Just for further clarification, I thought we were in the process of prioritizing because we intended to purchase yet this fall if that same opportunity came along to do the 2-for-1. And so I guess I was concerned about the prioritization and how that process is going to take place with that. I think to speak to Councilmember Plowman's comments too, some of the parks that were looked at, and I think we talked about not being able to move equipment because you'd lose the warranty and you'd lose those things, but perhaps when the life of the equipment was done, that would be the end of putting equipment in that park. And we talked about, the park plan addressed community parks. It did not address the 37 parks. And so the future of each park, that I think is a different discussion than what the park plan addressed. But I'm still, I'm hopeful that we're going to keep plugging away on the major parks here with that, and to focus on those types of things. But I am curious about the process we're going to take to prioritize who's going to get the equipment next with that. And so that's a concern, because I think we should be talking about ordering in the next month or so. And so how are we going to do that?
I don't have the exact answer on that. I know that I've had conversations with Mr. Brizendine, and a lot of the times we're looking at what is available and combining that with what is needed and try to marry those together. So he has prioritized the top 10 parks and their needs, and so I don't have that list. I don't have that list with me tonight, but he is going to look at that, and then he will be coming back to the community education and rec and talking about that. But I do know one thing, that talking with the school superintendent, and talking with Mr. Brizendine, we're not going to have that committee determining we want 3 slides, I want yellow seats, I want brown poles. That's not part of the board. So I don't think you're saying that, but just for the general public and for the members of the council.
Well, I don't think that's been determined yet. That's a conversation that's being ongoing about what the role of Community Ed and Rec Advisory Board is. But I do think, you just said he made the list of 10 parks. So that was a concern that I had, because there is momentum and interest on that group. Not to pick out the colors. We didn't do that last year.
Right.
We didn't do that. But I think that group knows the parks, has worked with that. And so I'm just concerned that we allow them to be a part of this process. And that's engaging the community and making decisions with what parks need what.
I would not read too much into my statement that he had a list, meaning that he compiled that list on his own. So I'm just saying that he had the list. You have to, excuse me, I don't know where he got the list or how he came about with that list, whether it was a group effort or not. It could have been, a combination of things, also with the prioritization of those items that were just listed earlier as far as needing replacement. And so I think it's a combination of those things, but unfortunately, we're not going to get the answer tonight with having them. But I just wanted to say that, you know, we are prioritizing them, and we're looking at what's on sale and what's not. I will also tell you that I've not had the opportunity to do it here, but, you know, the Rotary International is donating, you know, tens of thousands of dollars for that new signage we're going to talk about here in a minute for Robbins Island. But we need to engage our, you know, our nonprofits and our civic organizations and even our neighborhoods and talk about, you know, having them engage into their local park and raising money. And then we can maybe do one of those, someone mentioned going across to all the parks in a couple of years. But we have to do that, and that's one of the things that I've learned over the years is you want real community involvement, you want people to get buy-in. A lot of them will do it with not only their, you know, work equity, but with some money as well. And so I think that over the next year or two, you'll start to see some of those type of things occur.
Councilmember Plowman.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Councilmember Nelson, I just wanted to kind of piggyback and follow up on some of the points that you made regarding the park plan. And I guess it's maybe most of a question. Okay, so I live back, this is just an example, I live back behind Valley Brook. And so Voss Park and Valley Brook are fairly close together, but both of them are without kind of major play systems. And so I've been asking residents both from Voss Park and from the Valley Brook area, you know, what do you want to see equipment return? Obviously, everybody wants equipment to return, but, you know, something that kind of everybody agreed with is we would be willing to, you know, if one park or the other had to close, but the other park could have a whole bunch of, you know, cool stuff, we'd be happy with that. And residents from both neighborhoods said that. So what I'm wondering is, like, how do we take what do we do with stuff like that so as to not micromanage this stuff to death? Because I don't want to make all these decisions by myself because it's not my place. But what do we do with information like that? How can, like, what can help the Park and Rec Board facilitate discussions like that that might be helpful?
That's a great example, and, you know, I don't think we have a process in place right now. We used to have an Adopt the Park program. We don't have that going right now. So, I mean, I think that's a good one to be looking at. How do we want to make sure that each area of the city is served, you know, with that? And so I think that is a challenge for us to come up with a process to do that, because I don't think we have that in place right now.
Maybe that's something that we could explore. Maybe we could talk to Mr. Bresendine and see if he has any ideas in terms of public engagement and whatnot. Because maybe, you know, if that's the way that residents feel, like, hey, we'd be willing to settle with, you know, some fewer parks or traveling a little bit further, riding bikes are a little bit further, if those parks were outfitted decently. I know personally, my family, you know, if Voss Park, for example, is further away, but me and my kids will jump on our bikes and we'll ride down there and use that equipment if it's nice.
Yeah.
And I think the other residents would do the same thing.
In you know, the park plan was a document, a work in progress. So it started out with regional and community and neighborhood. And so, you know, the focus was to work, because we're behind on everything, to work on the community parks. That's Rice and Miller and those, and the neighborhood parks. So maybe that's a neighborhood conversation that we allow to happen, and for the neighborhood to be engaged in how do we fund these things too. So.
Okay, thank you.
Councilmember Swantis.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I'm really concerned when we start talking about shutting down parks. And I've heard a couple of times people make the comment that we've got the beautiful new playground at Robbins Island, and I don't think this community built $1 million playground to shut down neighborhood playgrounds. When I moved here 30 years ago, the one thing my husband and I commented on is I love it that there is a park in every neighborhood. You can walk down the end of your street and meet your neighbor. You know, today we tend to be so separated from our neighbors. I drive home, I hit my garage door, I walk in the house, I hit my garage door again, and there I am, right? So if I'm not out raking leaves or whatever. But our neighborhood parks are an opportunity for us to get out and meet just that, our neighbors. It's what makes community. When you talk about retention of people in a community, It is all about amenities and what brings people together so that they have an opportunity to make a connection with other people. And just this morning, a coworker was telling me about an opportunity she had to meet someone at a park, and it was only because the kids started talking. She found out this was her childhood friend. They knew each other in kindergarten, and they had both moved to Wilmer, and lo and behold, she would never have known this person was here in Wilmer, and they have so many similar items in their life today that it was really a godsend for them to find each other. That's what our parks allow us to do. We also are struggling with obesity in this country, and we need every opportunity to encourage our kids to get out and do something. And I don't know, but when I have my grandkids over and I'm doing the dishes, my husband and kids will take my grandkids down to the park. That's just a half-an-hour deal while I'm cleaning up dishes, but it gets them out. And if we're going to go to, if we're going to make a whole day of it, we might get in our car and drive someplace else. But they wouldn't have gone in the car and gone elsewhere to play on that playground. You know what I'm saying? That takes a special effort. We need our neighborhood playgrounds. We need our open space. The old swings in our neighborhood park, you know what? They're old swings, but they sure swing well. And the merry-go-round, we still push the grandkids around on that. They may be old, but the pieces of new equipment we have interspersed with the old functioning equipment, that's a good fit. I have no problem with that. But I think we need a place for our kids to throw the football around, play a pickup game of baseball, play some soccer, fly a kite. We need our neighborhood playgrounds, and we need them in the neighborhoods. So I am very passionate about that, so.
Okay.
Just in case you didn't notice.
You are passionate about that, yeah. You're right there.
All due respect.
Yes. Thank you, and I think we've gotten some good information. Share that information back with Mr. Brizendine, and Justin, thank you for going to the training, first off, to bring all of this to us, and then also bringing us a solution so that we know where we can go in the future. So we look forward to additional reports, and I think what I'm hearing across is that we need to make sure we have that connection with Community Ed and Rec as well. So Mr. Holland will make sure that that happens. So.
Change the agenda.
Yeah, let's change the agenda around so that we get the 7th Avenue people. Is that okay if we switch the agenda? Mr. Holland?
Well, I would just say that it's been 4, I've had my number 3 on there, or number 5 on there for 4 meetings now. So if we skip it tonight, we're going.
We'll get back to it.
5. Thank you.
We have members of the public here, so with respect to the members of the public, we'll go to item number 6 with the 7th Avenue Southeast Planned Unit Development. Mr. Brizendine, I'm sorry, Mr. Christensen or Mr. Peterson, I'm not sure who's going to open this up, but.
Mayor, members of the council, I can open, and I think, Corey, do we have a couple of those? Do that first. Do that plat first, yeah. So up on the screen, and I thought I had it in the agenda. It appears that I do not. But it's plats and it's information, it's documents that you all have seen a number of times. This is an overview of what the plat currently is. The pages following this one is a lot of text, but it basically says where it's listed in there is Outlot A instead of a right-of-way. It's listed on the plat and in the documentation filed with the county that says it's a private street, will be maintained privately. Fees should be gathered to continue maintenance of this street in perpetuity or whatever terminology it uses. And it's clear in there, clear with this plat, that the right-of-way width is not what our current standards were at the time or are now. And along with that, you've got the narrow lots and then houses on every lot, so you're not going to end up with setbacks. The other map I have, so this map, let me try to explain what I've got going on here. So I took an aerial view of the subdivision, of the area, the PUD rather, and I overlaid what an existing or what a current standard street right-of-way and setbacks would look like in that existing PUD. So that 70 number right in the middle of the screen is what would a current, if a new residential street was coming in, what a current right-of-way width would be. And from this distance, it's a little hard to see. Right underneath the 70 is the number 40. That is the width of the existing right-of-way, if you will, existing width of that roadway within that PUD. That 40 also corresponds to, very closely to, an existing curb and gutter width in a 70-foot right-of-way. Okay, so the curb and gutter width of the street itself is not the issue. But if you go beyond this, okay, so you've got a 70-foot right-of-way, and if you bear with me a little bit, the dashed lines are all the setbacks. So it's clear that the building setbacks, both side and front, are on top of or in the middle of virtually every house in this development. Further, the driveways are not on, or are not exclusively in the existing lots. There are a number of driveways that actually cross lot lines if it were to be converted to a public street. The 30-foot front setback, you can clearly see beyond the 70-foot right-of-way, is in everybody's front porch, it appears. So between the front setback, side setbacks, right-of-way widths, this is clearly an issue to create a public street out of a private street.
Mr. Christensen, I believe that when they came to us the last time, they were asking us, is there a way that that street, that we can check to see if that street was built to a city standard? Was the street indeed built to a city standard?
Mayor Kelvin, members of the council, I can answer that question. That street is not built to a city standard. That street was built to basically a driveway standard, which was fully acceptable to the city and to the developer because it was private. And it was designed, constructed, and intended to be a long driveway to serve each one of those properties. There was never intention on the part of the developer to have that be a public street. And Sean correctly pointed out that the width of that property as a whole presented some real limitations to development, which is exactly why the developer pursued the PUD, because he knew he could do a private street with a narrower right-of-way, or the outlot, as it's technically named and referred to in the declarations. And there was no way he could have profitably developed that site if he had done the entire PUD or done the entire subdivision to city standards. He had the PUD option available to him, and that's what the developer chose. And he filed declarations outlining exactly what was required by statute to be identified in that PUD. Every buyer should have had title work done that indicated that. It should have shown up in the title work that it was a PUD. The declaration should have been part of that title work. And, you know, I was here when that developer did that project, and it was never, ever intended to be a public street, and that's why it was constructed so lightly.
Bruce, what year was that done?
It's going to be, yeah, is there a date on that plat? 80. I'm going to guess it's probably a dozen years old.
Okay. So I know we have members of the 7th Avenue homeowners here, and so what you asked us to do was to come back, and I believe that we've answered the majority of the questions that you had, but the exception still remains is that what would it take to take this over as a city street? And staff is now telling us, you know, that what that would take. Did you have a dollar figure associated with that, Mr. Christensen?
Mayor, members of the council, I did not put a dollar figure to it when I started needing to remove houses.
Yeah, I'm trying to get what I know the questions to be out there first, and then, yeah, we're going to let you speak, Bob. Yeah, we'll let you do that. You know, I know that one of the things that in some of the work that they've done is they've went around and looked at some of the other widths of the streets. And, you know, the 40-foot width, and I think you addressed that, Mr. Christensen. But when we take a look at taking that over as a city street, we wouldn't be looking specifically at just that one component. And I think you and I had a conversation about this, that you don't measure from the curb cut to the curb cut, you actually measure the whole area, correct? Isn't that kind of what we talked about? Okay, okay. So council, this is coming back to us. Mr. Bonowitz and others were here, talked with us, and then there was a subsequent meeting that happened with a few council members and Mr. Bonowitz and a few other of the neighbors there. So Mr. Bonowitz, if you'd like to ask some questions pertaining to, I mean, we're not trying to open up more questions, we're trying to solve questions. So let's try to see if we can, how we can move this forward.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor and council members. You did not answer all of the questions. There was one issue about a legality. It happens to be statute 515B.1-106. And I asked that that be reviewed. I haven't heard a response to that. What we just heard, we don't have any qualm with all of the, you know, the width of the streets. We tried to do our best measuring. But that's kind of immaterial. We pay taxes. We were told when I was here last, I believe, that we got a reduction. This is not true. We do not get a reduction in tax because we live there. And I'd say, you know, this PUD, the way it was developed based on what you've just heard, seems really faulty. If all of that stuff is way back, setbacks, something's loose here. And I think you ought to take a look at that. As to notices, you know, most of the people, unless you are well aware, whoever writes that piece of paper to say this is a private PUD or whatever, and then most people don't know what a PUD is. Excuse me. So we don't really get good advice. Yeah, should we be searching our documentation? Yes, and probably don't. Most people probably don't. They rely on a realtor. They rely on just common sense that they're buying a home that's rational and in a decent neighborhood. I would even ask, why was this allowed? Why was this allowed? For whose benefit? The city, correct? I mean, tax base. And we pay our taxes. And, you know, we're missing a piece of support that we think we should receive. And as to the signage, you know, maybe it should, I had to laugh. I'm sorry, but I heard about a blue sign, and my neighbors said they put up a blue sign. They rushed out and put up a blue sign, and I looked for that blue sign for a week. I suddenly saw it. It's a street sign, a little like that. And I thought, well, this is really funny. Maybe it should be warning. You are now entering a PUD territory. Something like that, a blue sign, or, you know, some warning. How else are people going to know? So I'd ask you to really take a careful look at the process, and not just for us, but for all of the other PUDs. And I'm sorry, I get a little perturbed with this stuff.
Well, I think-
because it just seems so unfair. And I understand, I don't qualm with the size of the street and what happened in the past, but we're past the past, we're today. What is really the proper thing that this city should do for its citizens? Because this PUD was developed for the benefit of the city in the way it was developed, in my opinion. So,
And Mr. Holland, did we share with Mr. Bonowitz the question that he had about the legality of how the PUD was put in place? I was under the impression we had done that, but I mean, everything was done legally, according to the law, when the PUD was put in place.
It was done to the, by the letter of the law, and
The time.
I think he has a good question that I think a lot of people ask, why was this allowed? And that's one of the things that, I preach on all the time, is that when we make exceptions or we change policies and we allow things to happen, and you say, well, this is now, and that's exactly right. It's 10 and 20 years later, the people that don't understand what they've purchased or how they've purchased something, and that comes back to bite them, or the city in itself. But I've told the mayor, and I've told staff, we can take this street in tomorrow, hypothetically. But then you answered your own question. Why did the city allow this to happen? Because you've seen that it was wrong. And so I would say that for the council to take this street into the street system would also be wrong. And then someone else 20 years down the road would say what he's saying tonight. Why? So we have to be careful that when we set guidelines and we set street widths and we look at easements and sidewalk widths and signage, that we adhere and keep uniformity throughout the city so that there's not these type of situations 5 years, 10 years down the road, because it is unfair to people that buy this and they're unaware of what they purchased. And that's just my opinion. But a lot of times it's done for the developers. Sometimes it's because of space, and there's a legitimate reason for doing something like this. And then sometimes it's just out of money. It's just that simple.
we also did not receive answers to our requests in other areas. We said, how about if we procure some support from the city to help fix some of those areas? Might be cheaper for us to do it. It would be within the city's plan, if you will, or process, instead of doing something different. We didn't get an answer to that. In fact, this is the first time we've had anything, and there are no answers that we have received. I mean, we knew all this.
Okay.
Way past.
Mr.
But we
Peterson.
haven't had any answers to the document that we submitted.
Well, if you haven't seen the answers, I've seen the answers, so we'll get you the answers. I thought that that information had been shared with you. I mean, there was, every question that you asked, we wrote down, we asked the questions, and there was answers to everything. So
Could
you will
we
get
get a
that.
written response to that, please?
You will get it. Mr. Holland, can we make sure that gets done?
And,
Mr.
you know,
Peterson?
Is there any possibility of some help from the city if we procure it? Can you answer the questions? That's all.
Mr. Peterson?
I'd like to address the inference that things were done incorrectly when this development was platted and it was stuck. There was some inference that things were done inappropriately or illegally when this subdivision was platted. I think that generally people don't understand the difference between a typical neighborhood and a planned unit development. A planned unit development is an excellent land use practice. for unusual sites, and that's exactly what you found here. It gives the developer a lot of flexibility in designing the site. All the design elements and setbacks were approved by the Planning Commission and the City Council and are totally consistent with our written ordinances, the laws that the council has adopted. They are typically designed to create small, intimate neighborhoods, and that's why they get the relaxed setbacks. That's why you'll find structures closer together. I mean, that's an obvious clue to people buying in these subdivisions that they're different, is the fact that they can reach out their window and shake hands with their neighbor. You know, as to the value and the tax questions, the value of that Outlot A, which is the access to each of those lots, is calculated into each of the property's values. A portion of that value of that outlot is figured into the property value. So each of those properties has public access. They have a very long driveway, and that's exactly the way a PUD is intended. Now, the development has the option of putting a gate at the end of that. They can close that off if they want to control who goes in there and if they're worried about maintenance and that, but I don't think that's the best thing to do. We've got numerous examples of these things throughout the city, and they've all been done for a specific reason, and they've all functioned very well. And to me, the underlying question is, why hasn't the homeowners association collected dues to cover their responsibilities under the declarations? And that's what's done by every other planned unit development in the city of Willmar and every other one that I've been familiar with. There is a dues system. And if they want to talk about not knowing what's done, I believe there is a requirement under statute that when a lot in a PUD or a property in a PUD is transferred, that it is the responsibility either of the closing agent or of the realtor to inform the buyer of the covenants and that. So there are some responsibilities that certainly lie outside the city for this PUD.
Okay,
In response, first of all, Mr.
Bonowitz?
We do not receive a notice from the realtor. It's not very well done. The process just isn't valid. It isn't proper, in my opinion. I've asked, and if you would, I don't know if you've had the city attorney look at that statute. I think it should be looked at and a response should be given. You have the citation. Clearly says that you can't impose any more strict obligation on a PUD than any other similar property in the city. So I think that should be looked at. And we need a response to that.
You will get a response. Thank you. Next on the agenda, we have the Coalition of Greater Minnesota Cities Voluntary Environmental Assessment. Mr. Holland.
Mayor and council, as I stated earlier, we've been trying to get an answer to this. I brought this up approximately 2 months ago, and I was told to come back with an inquiry to the Coalition of Greater Minnesota Cities as far as how many people, how many cities or counties contribute to this environmental action fund. So that's the question we're asking tonight. We are members and fully paid members of the Coalition of Greater Minnesota Cities, but they also have this voluntary environmental assessment. And the question was, how many people use this voluntary environmental assessment? And so I forget the gentleman's name, but I sent an email to him, and he sent the answer back to me that about 50% of the cities and counties do participate. They also calculate that we would contribute 35 cents per capita, and that comes out to $6,962. Now, we do not have to contribute to this. We already, and you can see the invoice in there, that as a member we pay $39,615. So we do give a substantial amount of money to the organization now. But this is an additional fund that they, over the last several years, have started. and they've came up with this formula, and that's what I'm asking tonight. So we're going to pay the other full amount. The question is, do you want to pay for the Environmental Action Fund at the rate of $6,900? So that's the question tonight, Mayor.
Okay, Council?
I don't think we should, personally. It's, there's MPCA, PCA, EPA doing all this work, and I'm not sure, I don't recall what he said this particular group was going to focus on, but there's plenty of other groups out there. I don't think the city should participate in it myself.
Councilmember Nelson?
Interesting you should use those organizations, because the Environmental Fund is working in conjunction with the things that the MPCA is doing that they don't think is fair. We belong to MESERB already, and MESERB is part of this too, and so I don't think that the information that was shared tonight gave us any more information as to what the Environmental Fund actually does. There is a list of communities out there and what the amounts that they participate in. When we had this conversation before, I thought there was going to be additional conversations with our wastewater treatment people, along with our city engineer. I don't know that those have taken place yet. I think the exact comment that he made, that Councilmember Christensen made, would speak to the reason why the Coalition of Greater Minnesota Cities is trying to work to limit some of the requirements that are coming down the pipeline, causing us to have to pay additional funds. And so I'm not sure we're ready to vote on this. I support this, and I know other communities do support it, and I think there are great examples out there of the work that the Environmental Fund is doing. I don't think we've shared that information yet, and so I'm hesitant for us to just say, no, we shouldn't belong to this, because I see it as a responsibility and also an enhancement to things that we need to be working on to make sure we aren't having additional restrictions and additional laws and additional requirements.
Councilmember Schwantes, followed by Alvarado, followed by Christensen.
Thank you. I was just going to say, I had the same question that Councilmember Nelson had. What is our exposure if we did not have a successful time in lobbying against these environmental requirements? What is the financial impact to us? Is it the salty water discharge for the wastewater treatment center? Is that what we're talking about? And how many millions of dollars is that? Can we put any kind of dollars into that?
I don't know if, Sean, if you have any idea. I was not prepared to answer that question tonight, although it's a valid question, and you know, in particular with what we're dealing with, like our salt water and our discharge. I mean, it's very relevant, and the environment, no doubt, decisions cost millions of dollars literally to conform, and you know, the Water Act, you know, a few years ago that went nationally, you know, was billions of dollars, literally billions of dollars that affect, you know, everything from farming to the water runoff at the airport. So, you know, the question is, do they have a positive, does the Environmental Action Fund have a positive or negative effect or no difference? That I don't know either, but that was, you know, something that we do, you know, contribute to the coalition, and if we feel strongly as a group and as an organization that we should support that cause, then that's what we should do tonight, or if we do not feel like that, then I would like to have an up or down vote tonight.
So I'll try to answer the question a little more clearly. So the last time Donahue was here to talk to us about it, they told us that the salty discharge was about 20 million. I had a meeting within the last month with Mr. Herron here at our utilities, and he said that number now is closer to 40 million with the additional imposed restrictions that MPC is putting on it. Those are hypothetical numbers, and you won't know those real numbers until you actually do the study. So Our city attorney wanted to speak, and then I'm going to go to Councilmember Alvarado, followed by Christensen.
Yeah, Mr. Mayor, members of the council, at the risk of sticking my neck out on this, I do have some familiarity with the work that is being funded by this Environmental Action Fund because our firm is doing it largely. And it's really focused on 3 areas. One is filing legal challenges against the MPCA and even the EPA when they make decisions that, based on our technical review, do not appear to be scientifically supported. It's also focused on lobbying the legislature to try and bring some accountability to the MPCA in their rulemaking process and their permitting processes. There's a huge focus on that at the legislature last year. I'm sure we'll be back again with other proposals. And then finally, it's trying to work proactively to really address the problem. Obviously, there's a very strong push by this current administration on water quality and improving water quality in Minnesota, which is not controversial. Everyone wants to do that. But the tools that the state government has at this point are such that they really only focus on point source discharges, and that includes industrial discharges as well as city governments. You discharge 2 waters out of a pipe, and you're thus subject to regulation under the Clean Water Act. It doesn't really touch on the agricultural contributions to poor water quality. So the coalition is trying to find efforts to bring agriculture to the table to come up with some actually meaningful and productive solutions to the problems that everyone agrees should be addressed. So that's the work that's being done. What I can't speak to is whether the specific issues that the fund is going to focus on in the next year have large implications or not for your wastewater treatment facility in Wilmer, but the philosophy of the coalition and those who are participating in this fund is that everyone seems to get their turn under the microscope with the MPCA, and if you build up a resource to be able to push back, that will serve all cities' benefits. So, not trying to make a pitch, but I did want to at least explain to you what the work is that would be funded by this voluntary assessment.
Great. Councilmember Alvarado.
So what I'm understanding is that this Environmental Action Fund would be advantageous for us to go up against a Minnesota Pollution Control Agency or the EPA if they come down with a rule that we don't feel is applicable to us. Is that kind of what you're saying, or?
Correct, Councilmember Alvarado. That's the whole purpose of the fund, is to be able to push back on behalf of all cities in greater Minnesota.
Thank you.
Councilmember Christensen.
Basically, what this group, this fund that they call it, is they're going to lobby. They're going to lobby people that we elect, send to St. Paul to do our bidding. I mean, it's so backwards, folks. I mean, there's all kinds of lobbyist groups out there, and the cities are paying many of them. I don't believe we should fund this particular group. We should be talking to our representatives down in St. Paul and say, listen, this is ridiculous. You come out here and tell us we're going to spend $20 million, now it's $40 million for desalinization at a new plant that we spent $80 million on? Are you kidding me? You know, let's talk to them. Let's get Baker in here and talk to them. Let's get these people on our side. This fund is going to be a lobbying group. It's basically what it is. And you're paying them to go down and tell our people to do what we want them to do, and they should do it anyway. I think it's ridiculous. There's a lot of these funds out there, these lobbyists. There's many, many, many of them out there. You can join all kinds of them, but we just need to be in contact with our elected people and tell them, this is ridiculous. And I think they'll agree with us. I don't know how much control they have over the MPCA or PCA or Environmental Protection Agency, but they are elected by us, and they should be doing our bidding. And this is, to me, is a waste of money. I don't like paying lobbyists. I mean, Washington is full of them. St. Paul is full of them. And it's why our government isn't acting properly. Lobbyists are pushing people in different directions. It's not all about money. It's all about money. So I disagree. I think we should stay away from this.
Councilmember Plowman.
Well,
Thank
you, Mr. Mayor. I have conflicting thoughts here because I've seen the results of some good work that CGMC has done But I kind of thought that the whole point of CGMC and the dues that we already currently paid included stuff like this. And so what I'm wondering is, what's the purpose of creating a separate environmental action fund as being a voluntary assessment? If this is such a necessity to all cities, why not? Okay, so 50% of cities are paying it. If they said that this fund was needed to be funded, and you know, they could cut the rate in half and then just boost up our dues. I don't understand why it's a separate voluntary fund. That doesn't make sense to me, and I don't. Because theoretically, the work that they're doing, if they get positive benefits and we don't pay it, we still reap the rewards of the work that they've done. So why on earth would we just volunteer up money if we get, you see what I'm saying? It doesn't make sense to me. Why not, if it's so necessary, why not include it in the original dues for the services that they already do? I don't get it.
Councilmember Osmus.
Thank you, Mayor Calvin. Just to bring this closer to home, when we got dinged for some of the Environmental Protection Agency issues this last year, if we had been a part of this, would that have been something that would have been advantageous to us, that we would have benefited?
Councilmember Osmus, I don't think there's a direct connection between the stormwater MS4 violations that MPCA concluded
Okay.
occurred here and the focus of the Environmental Action Fund right now. It's mostly focused on the wastewater treatment facility and regulations on that, not stormwater at the moment, although that could change year to year.
But I think it does speak to the government overreach that Councilmember Christensen was talking about.
Well,
That's my concern.
right, but I remember Mr. Christensen talking about that it was an interpretation by the attorneys of saying that we had the things in place. We did follow the regulations and the rules, but they just interpreted it differently. And I'm just wondering if this group was helping assist cities with that. But, okay.
Councilmember Miskey.
Well, I don't like some of the discussion about putting the MPCA and the EPA as an enemy necessarily against cities, because they're there for a reason. I teach environmental science, and I can tell you the reason that we have clean water and land and so on is because we've had protection on it. Now, is there overreach? I'm sure there is. Absolutely, there's overreach. But when you look at this, it's talking about the unscientific and unnecessary regulations. My question will be, you opened the box. So the technical review that you can deem unscientific, I'm curious, how does that group do that? Are there scientists involved in this fund, or is it attorneys that decide what's unscientific?
No, there are aquatic environmental engineers that look at their methodology and the conclusions they reach, and you know, some cases I think would say, okay, that makes sense, and then in other cases they'd say, whoa, not this time, this doesn't work.
Okay, because that's what I don't want us to come out of here, because I've been hearing everybody talking about the regulations brought on by government agencies, but understand some of those regulations were put there to preserve what we have. Now, have they overreached? Yes, they have. I want to make sure you're fighting against the overreach and not the basic premise of the science that went into putting those in place.
Councilmember Nelson.
So I'm going to lobby tonight to, I know Ike wants this off the table. I thought we were getting new information tonight, and we didn't. I will personally bring back additional information next week, because part of what all of you have said are things that are being discussed at the coalition. How this involuntary assessment came up versus increasing dues versus some of the other things. And so I would lobby to table this, or I guess we're not in session, to bring back additional information with what they are actually doing and how it's affecting other cities and the cities that have contributed. So I will work to get that information, that it could be available in 2 weeks.
And with that, we will adjourn this meeting and go for a short, brief recess to the next meeting. We're adjourned.
All the cities.
Because it's not
Fighting me.